Good afternoon, everybody. I think we can start. First of all, just to say welcome to the site. I'm really grateful to you for coming. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, the room is packed. It's a standing room, despite what you may be able to see. So, yeah, and I'd like to welcome Martha Inés, who, as you'll know from the publicity, is Secretary General of Pax Christi International. Flew in from Colombia to Madrid on Sunday, I think, and then arrived with us yesterday. Done some things yesterday, and here we are today. So how we're going to run is I'm going to just interview Martha Inés for this. I build this as in conversation with, and I see we actually going to have a constructive dialogue. And then I'll do that for a bit, and then we can ask. We'll open up to the room. You can ask any questions you want. No one needs to rush away. So when we finish the kind of formal events, then you'll be free to chat to Martha Inés again, or to anybody else you'd like to in the room. And it should still be plentiful supplies of tea, coffee, and biscuits. I guess if the fire alarm goes off, I'll do the usual. We're not planning anything, but there must be a fire exit. Yeah, so these two doors, and then there. And the other thing is, if you need the toilets, then they're out of this door, as if you're going downstairs, and they're just opposite there. I think that will be it. If it starts to get too warm, we can open some windows. And if you think that our voices are dropping and you can't hear us, then just put your hand up and shout, speak louder, and we'll do that, won't we? So,
I will try to do my best.
Hello,
everyone. I'm Martha Inés Romero Medina, the last name of my mother, Medina. Romero, I'm proud to have this last name because of San Romero, our saint of America. And louder, okay. And I'm really pleased to be here with you today. So I'll try to share with you some ideas with this conversation with Andrew, but after that, it will be a dialogue, constructive dialogue. We expect to have that. So thank you for coming here, and I'm really pleased to be here with you. And please excuse my Colombian English.
You're doing very well, I'll say so. Are there any Spanish speakers in the room? No, okay, we won't switch into Spanish. I'll be gone, so fine. So you've said a little bit, Martha, about where you're from, but can you just tell us a bit more of the history of your career, your backstory, and how you end up as Secretary General of Pax Christi International?
Thank you. I'm the number 8 of a family of 10 children. So 5 brothers and 4 sisters. So we are 10 in a middle class family. So I'm married to Juan Guillermo, my husband, and I have 2 children, Charlie and Laura, and 2 grandchildren, Sophia and Otto, now adolescents. This is a picture from 3 years ago. My boy is a PhD in education, living in Estonia for the past 20 years and now in a sabbatical. So this is the last picture we were together. So in my past, I could say 45 years, I've been all my life dedicated to the social work. 11 in an NGO in Colombia, working for education with children and with teachers. We are trying to look for a new school for a new society. And in 1991, I was moved after a call to Oxfam, Great Britain. So I was working for Oxfam for 10 years as advocacy officer, program officer for Colombia and Ecuador. And then my work was globalized. Oxfam, of course, trained me a lot about advocacy for those in the global south, in our case, for Latin America, and for those development issues. But at the end of 1997, the humanitarian crisis arose in my country. So from development, strengthening indigenous capacities, peasants' capacities to work by themselves, with poor people to have opportunities for them, with gender issues, with women. So we found that there was a humanitarian crisis, so our program was moved to humanitarian issues. And then in 2000, I finished my position there, and I was moved to as a country manager for Colombia and the border with Ecuador for Catholic Relief Services. CRS is the US Caritas, depending directly to the bishops, the US bishops. These days, a lot of actions by the Trump administration. And then I was working close with the church, the Colombian church, but also, as I have been always for my history, with grassroots communities and religious congregations, those committed with the poorest in my country and in the border with Ecuador because of displacement and refugees issues because of the conflict. And I was there for 10 years, and in my background, it was very important, the issue of peace building and conflict transformation. So besides those backgrounds in my country with the SNGO, those global backgrounds in terms of advocacy, in terms of the democracy, gender, etc., I was fed by the issue of peace building. And it was the time, perhaps for 10 years, an advisor from the Mennonites, directly advising the bishops in Colombia and many dioceses, Jean Paul Levera, someone who has been a light for many in many places in the world. So with Jean Paul, we implemented a program on conflict transformation, context analysis, and moving to the church to a more important role in peace building. Without doubt, I would say that it was a time, that time we belonged to the working group on Colombia for Caritas Internationalis, because CRS is Caritas in the US. So we worked together with CAFOD, with SCIAF, with other many Caritas in Germany, Sweden, Norway, working for Colombia in peace building. And I could say that it was key for the church's role in the peace agreement in 2016, all the process from 2000 until 2010. In 2005, I was invited, I was informed that Pax Christi International Peace Movement wanted to have a speaking tour in Colombia with many people from many members went to Colombia. So I supported that tour. I was supporting some places with our partners at CRS. I visited with Marie Denise and Christine Wiesenbauer from Pax Christi Germany, Marie Denise from Pax Christi USA, and at that time she was part of the board, to a region and the near Panama region where Afro-descendants and indigenous were suffering massacres, many of human rights violations. And it was my time to know Pax Christi International. It was 2005, and in 2007, I was invited to be a board member representing Latin America. So there were 3 years of learning more about the movement as board member. In 2010, there was 2 beautiful opportunities to act in my region. It was the 30th anniversary of the martyrdom of San Romero, and the World Social Forum at Porto Alegre in Brazil. So there were no other people ready to support that 2 opportunities. So I was called to organize these 2 important events. So the first one, it was in Porto Alegre, and then I found how rich it is, the heritage in Latin America since the 70s. There's a letter from San Romero asking Pax Christi to go to El Salvador because of the many human rights violations, the situation. Unfortunately, the group arrives when he was killed. But it was a lot of information about how important have been Latin America for the movement accompanying them. In March, we met in San Salvador for this commemoration, and it was the time for us to reflect on how to move to a more organized program for my region. So I started as regional program coordinator for Latin America for Paxis International. I was finished my career at CRS, and I have still many good friends at Oxfam and CRS, but I was more implementing this program as consultant, and it was a very good time for to go around the region, exploring how the people live their values of nonviolence, restorative justice, and we found that there have been many conflicts caused by extractives. So in 2011, we designed a project on how communities resist from a nonviolent approach to extractive corporations, businesses in my region. Because we found that their social, environmental conflicts are at the top of all our region. And there was a common pattern on the way that corporations are giving money and corrupted governments, dividing communities, looking at the private and also official security forces protecting their businesses, affecting the community's rights, etc. So it was a pilot in Peru in 2012, 11, about how contaminated is the water in the Lima district, 11 million people, by mining 4,500 meters above the sea. So, we went there and see the consequences of mining, contaminating the river, at that place. And then in 2012, we organized a program for 7 countries, working with communities, our partners there. Some of them from Justice and Peace or congregations, national religious congregations conferences, others from civil society organizations or peace organizations. So 7 countries: Mexico, Chiapas in the south of Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Colombia, Peru, Paraguay, and Chile. And it was 4 phases, 3 years each, in accompanying those communities affected by this situation in strengthening their capacities to context analysis, conflict transformation from a nonviolent approach, and on advocacy tools and methods from the community's grassroots capacities for them to defend their land, the local and national level, and we as a global movement contributing to that from our capacity to advocate towards United Nations, European Union, OAS, etc. And this program has ended, but I was called by Christi, International Secretariat in 2022-21 to have an evaluation of the program, the general program, because it was, I mentioned I was a consultant, so it was part-time, but I was very passionate about this program. But at the same time, because of my master's in evaluation programs, development, peace, and others, I was working as an evaluator for the Norway, Sweden government, for the OAS and the peace process in Colombia, and for Caritas Internationalis. So I was evaluating this pro bono for my movement, that it is my passion. So there I could read many documents, interview many people from my colleagues in the regions, from the board, etc., from the international representatives to our United Nations. So I learned more about the movement. And at the end, in 2002, I was invited to present, if I was interested, my CV to the call. It was a global call for the position of Secretary General. So from the 1st of January 2023, I am in this position mainly serving the movement to connect, to promote constructive dialogue, to put my staff, that it is not only in Brussels, we are multicultural and diverse team working in many places to the service of the movement. So this is what I was connected with Pakistan. Sorry, it is my age. It took some long time.
I think what comes across is your passion. So that's absolutely fine. So you were saying to me yesterday that the last time you were here, you did was it a 21 venue tour of the UK? And that was around Colombia, human rights in Colombia. Do you want to just say a bit where you went last time? Because I think people would be interested.
Yeah, I was in a huge, very intense speaking tour in 16 cities, 23 days with a religious sister, my friend from the Laudas community, who was used to accompany their charismatic indigenous communities, very affected by massacres, displacement, suffering, and land blockades, etc. So we came in 1998. So it was 16 cities from London, many places, up to Inverness. So it was a good time for us to get for more solidarity, to unveil the purpose of the government to deny that there was a humanitarian crisis in the country. So I came later as Oxfam, but the last time it was more than 20 years.
Yes.
So I'm really happy to come back.
And you arrived yesterday and it was still raining.
Yeah. I like.
So I think for many of us, what we'll know of Colombia is that there was a long-running civil war, the violence associated with that, and it also, I think if you went out into that playground over there and said Colombia, some of those children were saying drug cartels. So it is obviously Colombia that isn't what Colombia is, but can you tell us what it was like during that period, and then where the country is now in terms of the peace agreement and violence these days?
Unfortunately, after the peace agreement, we don't have peace, and there are many reasons for that. Colombia has a background of more than 60 years of political violence, mainly promoted by the two main parties. The elites in Colombia, liberal and conservative, have promoted since more than 65 years polarization amongst the people, amongst the poor people, against one to the others. And there are many structural situations that have caused this. Of course, the presence of the drugs, it is main reason because of the violence, but it is not the only reason. Before that, there have been an exclusion of people, poverty, a big concentration of richness people in few families, as many of our global south countries. And the issue of the corruption have weakened our democracy in many ways. In 1990, I think, or 89, 4 candidates of the presidency were killed. 3 from the leftist groups and 1 from the Liberal Party. So the situation has been very, very confrontative. And as I said, there were a good initiative by the government, Santos government, to have a process. I think the good thing in the success of this process to have an agreement, as I understand it, is the most important agreement in these last 50 years of this. It is because they started with a very confidential process, the 0 phase, in dialogues in Oslo, in other places, with key people moving to go to Havana. It took a lot of time. There were some successes in the sense of getting involved the army, some entrepreneurs, rich people, but also it was a demand by women to be there by many organizations. Without this, it couldn't be an article, a special in the document article about how the war has affected women's bodies, women daily life in many ways. Not only by guerrilla, also by the army, by paramilitaries. So from my perspective, it is one of the most important content peace agreements, peace accords in recent years. So the place where I studied peace studies at the Brock Institute for Peace Studies at Notre Dame in the US, they have the task to document to the database, the barometer, how it has been implemented. And fortunately, the agreement was signed by the parties. And then President Santos asked the citizenship to vote to ratify that in a plebiscite. There were many fake news, like, for example, the guerrilla demobilized will take the pensions for retired people, or that they will be raping our daughters, etc. Many, and unfortunately, this was 49% and 51%. So against the peace. So it was a real shock for all of us. And after new agreements between the opposition, the right wing, and those who supported the peace accord, there was some months later a new agreement, and it is what we have. The opposition for the right wing, it was working for 4 years in diminishing the funds for the peace agreement, the implementation of the peace agreement. And now with this new government, there was a new fresh air, but there are many things to feel. So in terms of the new government, it is for the first time in 200 years that we have a leftist party in power. So President Petro promoted a total peace, this is the name, with some challenges. It is a very audacious proposal. It has the legal approval of Congress at that time. There was a consensus of this. But the main challenge is that it is not only with leftist guerrillas, but also it includes groups involved with drug businesses. The former guerrillas, small groups that was not in the agreement with FARC, they formed two groups. They are very influenced by narcotics. And the ELN, that it is the most traditional guerrilla besides the FARC, with some inspiration in the liberation theology. They have been more radical in their demands. So now the dialogue are cut. There's no dialogue at this moment, although they have been more than 2 years in trying to insist on the process. So unfortunately, I should say that there are no good news for now, but we continue. People in Colombia, we are not only people very happy, very optimistic, very working hard on trying to overcome the situation. But the situation is that the violence is increasing in some regions. People are suffering, still suffering. There have been some laboratories of peace that has been successful, but we need more steps in that. International community has supported this in a very good way. So these are the main challenges for us as for civil society organizations and social movements. The poverty is still there. The total peace have good intentions, but it takes more time and conditions to overcome this. There have been proposed many reforms in the health, in the pensions, labor reform. Some of them have been blocked by opposition from the right wing parties. And the vice president, she's a leader from the Afro community. She has been losing their role in the past time. It is so small to leave that, but to read to you, there are many interesting stories and strategies by the grassroots communities. Those are the good news, and this is the way that we are working. First, to creating a safety environment for communities. So there are many protocols to self-protection by themselves. They are all the time, and some of organizations accompany them, including Christi in Latin America for Colombia, creating safe space for narratives, the issue of narratives, to live their cultures, to reconnect, to promote the dialogue with the other, because there's a lot of polarization. And the advocacy is key for the national and international level. And I think there is a conciliatory spirit in the government, although our president used so much of the Twitter. So maybe it is something that doesn't help in this process. So I think the time is running. Next year we will have elections, so it is a risk for all of us to find that in the best way. And unfortunately, the pendulums could be to the right. So it is something that we are very worried and concerned. We know Argentinian President Milei or Bukele in El Salvador doing very bad news, very bad things against human rights, against the poorest. So this is something that we are concerned about. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some questions around that. I think we'll put some things up on our website about praying for Colombia. So we'll take some of what you said and put that out there. I'm sure there'll be other questions as well. So we have a great football team, of course. You're passionate about that football team, aren't you? So, yeah. So, yeah.
That's not easy to explain Colombia's situation.
Yes. So if we come back to Pax Christi International, it's a big year. 80 years since it was founded. I don't think either of us were around at the time. So, yeah, what are the plans for celebrating that this year?
Okay, I will be running with that. So this is our team. It is only Lise from France, the communications assistant, not there in the picture, but it is Julia from Italy, living in Brussels. In charge of, she's the advocacy officer, a very talented Italian. Dieudonné, my colleague, he's Rwandese and Belgian citizen, formerly migrant, and he's in charge of the program in Africa. Alejandro from Colombia, he's supporting me in my part-time for Latin America and the Caribbean. Nicolas from Spain, living in Spain, he is the new director of the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. A young man, the Salamanca University, expert in management of conflicts, communities, family conflicts, etc. Of course, Marie-Denise, very well known by all of you, now supporting Nicolas in his new task and in charge of directing the Pax Christi International Institute for Catholic Nonviolence. Then Martha Inés, then Did, my colleague in charge of finances and administration, and Teresa from Italy. She is in charge of the fundraising campaigns. And this is the leadership, my two co-presidents, Sister Wamuyu Washida, African, she's from Kenya, religious sister, and Bishop Mark Stanchek and Martha Inés. So we have in the center of all our work at the International Secretariat, active nonviolence as a cross-cutting issue, everything we do. And we have three areas of work. empowering communities. So we used to accompany coming from the experience in Latin America. Then we open a program in Africa for the Central Great Lakes region and the Eastern region of Africa in training religious sisters in active nonviolence, trauma healing, reconciliation, and for them to train other people. So the past phase, it was 2 years, 1,600 religious congregations, taught, it was not religious congregations, but religious sisters, and more than 20,000 young people trained in those issues. So we manage the team of trainers with the methodology of training of trainers, so they multiply in a cascade process. And we work also with the young mothers for them to be aware about their rights, etc. And in Latin America, as I explained, it was more focused on how to accompany communities to care of the land, care of their culture, and to advocate for the situation towards the presence of corporations. The second big area, it is strengthening the Catholic Church. We are Catholics, although in some regions we work in an interfaith or our members come from other faiths. It is the case in Australia or in South Korea, for example. But we work with the Catholic Church to strengthen their capacities to live the gospel non-violence. And church, the people of God, not only with the hierarchy, but the grassroots community from the peripheries, confronting violence with a non-violent approach. So it is the Catholic Non-Violence Initiative, a program that we are contributing a lot because it is a way to live our faith and to promote, to advocate to those hierarchies, not only at the Vatican level. We have dialogues, sometimes tense dialogue with the Secretary of State, or we work together with some dicasteries, the Academy of Social Sciences, etc., but also at the regional level or national level. And the last one, it is impacting policies. We consider it's important to advocate for those big issues that are of our concern and our members' concern. So we are organized around working groups. So the first working group, it is about disarmament, nuclear weapons, human integral security. So it is a working group, very active on that. You belong to this working group actively. And I forgot to mention that Ashley has been a member of the Latin American Working Group. It is the way that we are analyzing, strategizing, and then acting in many ways, in Geneva, in those events, in mobilization in many places, asking the governments to ratify the treatment, etc. The second working group, it is Just Peace in Israel and Palestine. Now, coming from the reflections last year, it is not only Israel and Palestine, but it is a geopolitical issue. So we call now the working group on Just Peace in the Holy Land, because it is interconnected, all the impacts on Syria, Lebanon, and others. So we have one of the most active members here, Anfar, our dear Manfar. So it's important to see how the movement in England and Wales are contributing to the global agenda by you, by Ashley, by Anne, and by many others. So you are the channel to bring to the working group those issues related to your country situation, the possibilities to advocate towards the bishops. It's a very good piece of document, and towards the government, etc., and at the same time to be fed by others. And the third one, it is related to extractives, but now it will be for the working group on ecological justice for all communities in the global south, because it is the same with Democratic Republic of Congo. We discovered that it is not because of the militia in 23 with the army from Rwanda invading Goma and other cities, but all is around the issue of uranium. and the Philippines. So it is a global South issue, natural resources, our richness, for the interest of those in the global North. And there's a narrative about the transition in energy, clean, but we see that it is not clean. In fact, it continues contaminating, doing many bad things. There's the triangle of the salt in between Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, a rich place where you can find lithium. So it is another business for this transition that has not been clear, not clean, not respectful of our people and our land. So we have areas of work. I will pass this because it is quite late. I invite you to read our annual reports. There are many statements in our Facebook, in our website, in our Instagram. So it is the time for you to look at that and how are our main concerns about that. And I refer to the advocacy work. So we have teams. My team, besides these 9 people, is conformed by these people. They are all of them all senior people with experience, some retired from the United Nations arena. Others are more young, working for Christi International and of course for our members in many issues. But there's the big team. It is at New York level towards the United Nations, in Geneva, related to nuclear and also business and human rights. In New York, there are many issues, including the interfaith, the need to build peace and from an interreligious interfaith position. In Vienna, we have 2 ladies in charge of those dialogues for peace as an NGOs. In Paris, more focus on education for peace, but also interfaith dialogue. In Europe, Strasbourg, all the issues related to the European Union, but also it is Julia in Brussels advocating for those key issues about minerals, critical minerals, the interest for these corporations, and the law at the European Union, etc. And Martha Inés orientating or accompanying this group of people. All of them are volunteers, with the exception of Julia, Teresa, and staff member, and Martha Inés. Okay, and the issue of representation, networking, and partnership. I include these pictures, but there are many. You can imagine how rich is our movement. So we put a lot of attention and our energies in strengthening the capacities for our team, our members, and to put in dialogue those relationships to others. So the representation, it is not only Martha Inés representing the movement in some key scenarios, but also, for example, Dieudonné, my colleague for Africa today, he's in the African Union Summit representing Christi International. Or Julia at Geneva with a speech about the issue of nuclear concerns. So networking, because we are a peace movement and we can't act alone. So we coordinate with many allies, other platforms, other people in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, and at the European level, and of course in the North America. And partnership, because I think it is the way that we come back from the local to the global. So your partners at the parish level, at the community level, connect with the national policies and at the global levels. So the way that we are working with the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative is really important for us. We live our spirituality. In the case of those issues related to ecological justice, we live our eco-spirituality, including not only our faith as Catholics, but other beliefs, ancestral beliefs, indigenous beliefs. So it is what we do. Last year, we had the opportunity Anne was there to honor our partners, the 2023 Peace Awardees. They came from Palestine and Israel, working together. More than 700 families affected directly by the conflict, daughter, relative killed, etc. So it was a time for us to honor them, but to live our solidarity. This picture here, it is the 2024 for this Haiti Justice and Peace Commission and a religious person accompanying indigenous in the Amazon in Bolivia. So this is the type of work that we do. Just to finish, we are organizing, promoting since last September the launching of the Catholic Institute for Nonviolence. It is virtual, but we have a space in Rome. So we are connecting with 3 key issues, and Pat have been very active in this process at CNI, at the Institute. So this is another way to be involved with the global movement. Okay, I won't be more on this. There are one more slide. Just to say that this year we will have the commemoration of the tragedy in Hiroshima. We have the Jubilee, turn debt into hope, that we are being involved in many ways. And of course, the issue of, sorry, it took more time than we expected, the 80th anniversary. So we are very happy in celebrating our heritage. So it is building bridges for tomorrow. And we will start on the 13th of March with a panel in Brussels in the Chapel for Europe on how faith organizations and networks live their faith, confronting this challenging world. And then we will have a momentum for reflection and prayer, interfaith. So it starts with March, then there will be some pilgrimages. One important pilgrimage, it will be to Lourdes. How do you say Lourdes? Lourdes. Lourdes in July. So all of you are invited to go there. It will be very important, but remember the movement started with France, a woman, Martha, with a bishop in Germany, trying to work together in a divided societies after the war. It was not finished the war, but there are the process of ending the war. So there will be another idea of having many webinars, so enjoying, celebrating, commemorating, honoring the memory of many have been contributed to the movement. And we will close in November, 5 to 9, with a conference, an assembly of members, and something that comes from our 70th anniversary. You were there, the Youth Forum. This is the Bethlehem commitment. It says in one part that we should promote more active participation of young people because it's a young movement. Some of us are older than this generation, so we need to strengthen the promotion of an intergenerational dialogue, and including, and it is something that I'm really committed to, the participation of young people in the making decision bodies in the board. So 1 or 2 people that have not been accomplished until now, but we will get that in the future. So that's our preparations, our work hard with our members, because 9 people couldn't do anything without our members. So thank you, gracias, for your attention. I'm sorry for taking more time.
I know you've put that together in the last few hours, so that's fantastic. Thank you for the hard work. We'll give you a bit of a break. I'll just say mentioned the document that was issued by our own Bishops' Conference last year, the Department of International Affairs, called to be peacemakers. It was available online initially. Now it's available in print. I know some people asked for it. Grateful to Liga for sorting that and for bringing lots of copies. So they're over here. If you want to take one, or take 2 or 3, and they'll also be available through our website online shop at the cost of the postage only. So yeah, pick that up and take it away. And now we'll come over to any questions that you have for Martha Inés. So,
and conversations.
A conversation, yeah, we want a conversation, yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you wanted to put a question in the chat, then Aisling will pick that up and we can ask that as well. So, who wants to go first?
Yeah,
my name's Pat Gaffney. Fantastic overview of the work, and obviously we've worked for many years together. And I'd be interested to know, you've highlighted how extractives are a kind of common feature of conflict in the context of Latin America. And I just wondered, from your contact with the international family of Pax Christi, are there any other underlying common conflict kind of issues that impact within the European or the African or are there any other common factors that you've identified in your work?
I could say that one of these that maybe we need to work more in the global north is the issue of decolonization. We consider that our countries in the global south are very affected by these policies or the model implemented by our governments. So we need to consider the richness of our movement in promoting more the voices of the global south. We are not the voice of the voiceless. They have their voice. So this is something that I'm trying to promote in the culture of our movement. Sometimes we forget that. And the movement was born in Europe, but the movement now is global. So for good, there are many important learnings that we have to listen from the global south related to decolonization. It is important to consider. The issue of the Jubilee, I think it's important to see how to move to a campaign promoting not only debt alleviation, as Pope Francis has said, the need to think about those suffering injustices, including those in prison. So I think it is another thing that we should tackle. And related to extractive cities, because they affected many things. When I started the program in 2012, I remember some of the board members asking me, Martha Inés, but we are not an environmental organization or network. But it was affecting relationships, it was social environmental conflicts, and we are a peace movement. Luckily, 1 year later, it was Pope Francis and then Laudato Si to support our struggle in that. And now we understand that for many years that it is a key issue related to biodiversity. So this week, Julia, our colleague, was in Rome for the conclusion of the COP16 on biodiversity, the Conference of the Parties. We went with Bishop Mark, the co-president, and also with for this Peace Award to Haitians and the sister in Bolivia to Cali, Colombia, to influence. But we didn't do it alone, but with all the ecclesial voices in Latin America to have one voice for this. So I think extractives affects many things, including policies, changes, etc. And the issue of active nonviolence, it is because it affects a lot. And we, as a peace movement, it is what we can offer. Many methodologies, the spirituality of living nonviolence. So we are changing the minds of many of our hierarchs in thinking that maybe nonviolence is for Buddhists, or to pacifism, passive. No, we are not passive. For that, we are talking about active nonviolence, citizenship, power to change things transformatively, but without violence. That's the key. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Joe Shadletsky, Independent Catholic News. Could you say something about Ukraine and Donald Trump and how we can respond in a non-violent way to him? Yes.
60 seconds.
Thank you for your simple question. No, it is something that it is of our concern with me. We belong to the Catholic Peace Building Network at the board. So we are reflecting 2 weeks ago about the issue because most of them are based in the US and they are very affected by the situation because we see like, okay, this is not good, but it is quite normal to see Duterte in the Philippines or Bukele in El Salvador or some crazy people in the global south. But it is the power of the US saying and doing many things that affect a lot of people. Not only the officials at USAID or USIP, but many affected by the contribution by these programs. So it is something that we will be producing today. Next week, I will be sharing with our colleagues at the Pax Christi Scotland. And I was asked to produce an article, 600 words on this issue. So this weekend I will be reflecting about how to tackle this from a peace movement. So for sure we have to act. We have to mobilize our people. There are many ways to mobilize. In the last, this week, I was in Madrid. It was the webinar for the Global Solidarity Partnership for Peace in Palestine. So it was Dr. Mustafa Bugatti, and he said, let me remember, boycott, divest, and sanctions. So I think we should consider some of these. Of course, it is the power doing very bad things. We trust in the institutional judiciary in the US that in the past administration of Trump could stop many things. For sure we will be organizing that. There's no working group on Ukraine. It is a program to understand what is happening after 1991 and the cut of the Soviet Union, etc., for the Central Eastern Europe region. But we could confront those situations in Ukraine from our nonviolent loop focus in understanding that there are many actions by active nonviolent people there within the country and also in Russia. There is an initiative coming from some of the Pax Christi members in Europe to conform a group, a solidarity or working group on Ukraine. It is in process. We are studying that. It is the same request by people in Sudan. We don't have program in Sudan. We have programs in South Sudan, in Kenya, in Uganda, and then Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. The Congolese people heavily affected these days. But it is the way that maybe we will respond into this. But it is possible to press, but the problem is when it arises this interest, not from geopolitics interest, but from the business politics. So in this analysis these days, there is an expression of worried about the role this Elon Musk is playing in the administration. It is not in the corporations level, but it is in the politics, in the bodies of the government, in different departments. So this is something new.
It's not new, it's gone on for 3 years. There's nothing new about it.
Yeah, but this is more open than before. So it is something that we should respond, and we don't respond without consulting our working groups, our people at the United Nations level, and our spiritual guidance, our co-president. So that's the way that we are working. Thank you for your question.
Hello. Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. How are you dealing with the issue of conflict and climate change? And will you be at the Brazil climate talks in December?
Yeah, we will be there. We see this in two ways. There is violence against communities because of this model. It is not natural that communities most affected by many events are the poorest in the poorest areas, risk areas. So it is the model. But now the planet is crazy. So this is one way of violence against people. But the violence against the nature, the Mother Earth, it's heavily and it is out of control. So when we see the situation in Valencia or the rivers flooding in Germany, so it is another thing. So we see this from our peace building and active nonviolence eyes as the way to two things: to continue advocating for a banned treaty on business and human rights. The principles, business and human rights principles at the United Nations, they are not binding with the legislation of the countries, nor the corporations. And we know that there are global scenarios for legal causes that have the main buffet of lawyers against communities fighting and defending their lands. So this is one way, the business and human rights ban treaty. The way that we are working for Latin America is strengthening their capacities as communities to resist, not to be displaced, to protect their rights in terms of, for example, in Guatemala, the community was affected by a Canadian mining group, very powerful, in bombing the underland. So the houses were broken, and the company didn't want to recognize, but they are indigenous without the traditional indigenous way to dress. So they said we are indigenous, but there was a case in the legal court, in the constitutional court, and there were DNA examination, and they are indigenous, so they win this struggle, this battle. But the thing continues because they have to be as ILO 169 convention, they have to be consulted before the mining is working. So these have been many pressures on them, but strengthening them, their capacities to analyze not only what they see, but what it is behind those conflicts, interests, which are the main actors interested in that, who are the main actors to support, to contribute to their fights. So we see, for example, in our working group on extractives, we see the AIDA, the Inter-American Association for Legal Defense. There are lawyers, but also scientists, experts in geology and many things. So they are supporting our communities, our partners in their struggle. So this is the two ways, at the local and at the global. And of course, to the United States, there's an interfaith group we belong to in New York, advocating for the good rule, a good law on critical minerals. We have, with others at the European Union level, advocate for the due diligence law to control those corporation activities. So these are the local and the global at the same time.
Ashley.
Yeah, so this is from the chat, so it's from Francis. So Francis says, in the context of the many challenges in the world, how much is Pax Christi becoming a development organisation rather than a campaigning organisation? It's a bit of a challenge there.
It is clear, Francis, our answer. We should not, and we don't have the capacity nor the resources to do that. We could campaign, we could promote raising awareness about the key issues. But in fact, we don't promote development, but we invest on human resources, the women, men responding to this. In the case of many contexts, we promote women's land governance because it is a patriarchal society that gives more rights to men. But we are not a development, luckily, because I think it is what we do, it is the richness of our movement 80 years later, and I think these days with more importance, because we invest in the people to resist, to try to change this model, to try to respond to the demands of the people in another way. We are not a development organization, but we coordinate with others who could give resources. For example, in the case of Africa, we have a small donor from the Netherlands giving money because he trusts in that, giving money to small entrepreneurship. So it was a dialogue with our team. We are not a development agency, we're a peace movement, so we can offer trainings on advocating for their demands, on acting on violence, on non-violent communication. But with this it's a small, 5,000, 7,000 euros, yeah, per 1 year. It is nothing, but they are very happy. These people trained by ourselves in having their hairstyle small program or growing pigs or cropping some seeds. That's the way, but we are not. Yeah, thank you.
We'll write that down if we ever need it. John.
Yes, so I work for the Fellowship of Reconciliation in England and Scotland, and I bring you greetings from the broader International Fellowship of Reconciliation. I informed the International Committee I was allowed to come and how lucky I was to be here, and they send very warm and heartfelt greetings and reassure all of you that within the fellowship we are all upholding Pope Francis at the moment, as well as institutions like yourselves who have seen his leadership be so formative and I hope encouraging, because at least from the outside, where we don't see all the battles of things that don't get done, we're like, wow, if only we had a leader who spoke out so often on war being wrong, then the world might be a better place. You've covered a lot of different things. One shared area where we both have interest is in the United Nations. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind reflecting a bit on the value of faith-based networks still being plugged in to things like the UN, because 80 years ago when it was founded, we were huge, but actually the world's moved on, yet we're still there.
Yeah. Thanks for your comment. Let me tell you that I know very well Fellowship of Reconciliation in Mexico, in Colombia, in many places, accompanying people as many civilians, unarmed civilians accompanying people. And it has been a way to diminish the risk of these people. And with the I4 and also with Fellowship of Reconciliation, we are working together in the issue of the global partnership for peace in Palestine. This is a coalition convoked or joined, asked by some people in Latin America, but now it is globally working with civil society and groups in Palestine. At the beginning, it was a very good dialogue on how to move on a more Palestinian and Israeli coalition, because there are many people in Palestine working for peace in Palestine, working for peace in the region, and they decided for now only Palestinians with us. Fellowship of Reconciliation has been key for in New York for the relationship with some leaders of the Palestinian community. And we sent 2 letters to the Secretary General and the President of the current Security Council, asking for the implementation of Article, I think it is 33, in promoting the autonomy of the people to live their own rules. So we are working together, and the way that we do this morning, I saw yesterday a message by WhatsApp, because I don't know if you, but in Latin America, in Africa, we are very active in WhatsApp. I know there are some messages, please avoid WhatsApp because it is not safe, it is etc. But we will function. So because Pax Christi International has the status towards the United Nations, we could support these people for the budget. So we will be working with Fellowship of Reconciliation for a visit, special visit from 2 key people from Palestine and New York in the coming weeks. So this is the way that we work together in the sense. And the other thing that it is common, it is the issue of protection, protocols, self-protection by communities, protocols by their own context, their own language. So it is something that we have worked a lot in our communities in Latin America, because I can say.
John's kind of wider question around the importance of faith groups at the United Nations. So
Yes, we work together. In the case of extractives mainly, not mainly. In the case of interfaith work for peace in the world, our colleague Mary Jelenich is deeply involved in dialoguing with these groups. She was very close to the, I think it is Iranian president that was died in a helicopter recently, some months ago. So this is also our working at the United Nations level. Yeah.
Hello, yes, so I'm Catherine Knight and I'm the chair of Pax Christi in Wales, but also coming from Merseyside and bringing warm greetings from members in Merseyside, the local group. So I feel very challenged by what you've said and very stimulated on maybe a couple of levels. You spoke about going from the local to the global. I think that's a good phrase I'm going to keep in mind. And I was very struck by both the local activity of the grassroots in their own communities and thinking how little we do of that in terms of engaging with violence in the UK, and also the global issues and the connectedness with United Nations. So somehow I feel we're somewhere in the middle, not touching those. And so that's something for me and for us to reflect on. Should we be doing more of that? But the general question is, as somebody from the outside who has the international perspective, you're coming to a Pax Christi community that's relatively old, not just in age here, but in terms of there's been a Pax Christi community for a long time. So from the outside, what do you see are the challenges and the opportunities for us in the UK as part of sort of European Pax Christi movement? How can we contribute?
Thank you for your question. I think it is really important to distinguish between UK not being a member of the European Union officially, but UK strongly linked with Europeans for always. Not only for the wars, but also for peace efforts. And my main recommendation it is, with all my respect, it is to recover the sense of belonging to a community with those people at the local level. I believe in the local power to change things, to resist, to change things. And at many levels. I see an experience in the Philippines where there are most of the people at the local level in the governance, in the governing bodies, most of them in favor of the mining and the national government. But they worked hard for 4 years to change the relationship, the relation. So now most of them are against mining, defending their land at the local political power. So I think, I believe in the capacity to build strong ties with the local level, and the ecological justice, you see that I'm not talking about climate justice, but ecological justice is more than climate because it implies the people and the nature as a theological body. And this is a way, for example, to connect with young generations. The young people are very touched about what is the future for us, for our children, if we have children. The other thing it is that this model has created a sense of individualism. So come back and to the solidarity, to the way that we are supporting others, no matter if it is the other migrant or the other from our neighborhood, from the south, from the north. How to connect with that? So solidarity, the feeling of the compassion, to see in the eyes of the people. So small things, and to be active as citizens, because it is another issue. There are many abstentions in elections. I don't know if it is the case in the UK, but to promote an active, because we have the power to change things. We don't have economic power. Sometimes we don't have political power, but we have the ethical power to change things. But we should move on that. And we have to be lucky with having this global movement. You have seen 4 people in this national chapter in England and Wales involving global issues in our working groups. And it is the way to go to the local, to the national, mid-level, as we have said, to the globe.
Thank you. I think that's a good place to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, of course.
Sorry.
It's not a good place to say.
Sorry. Leader Fire from Catholic Bishops' Conference over in Wales. You spoke really eloquently about the need to decolonize. And I think in Latin America, there's so many good examples, especially from the past, for example, the Zapatista movement in Mexico in the Chaco region. And this is going back, way back in the 90s, we're talking about 30, 40 years ago, I think it was 1991, when they took to the streets. And even then, there was a lot of push and empowerment of the local indigenous communities to take matters in their own hands and understand their power when it comes to land and ecology and precious resources. But then after a while, that sort of withered away and died in a way. And there are many other examples of this. And I guess my question is, how do we actually keep that spirit alive? Because time and time again, it is brought to the forefront, but then it's sort of forgotten. And you talked quite eloquently about the need to recognize the power to empower local communities, but I often feel like local communities don't have that much power because decisions are taken by those in power who are often corrupt, and often money speaks.
Yeah.
So I guess like the question is, how do we empower local communities in a very practical way, or even how do we change those in power? It's a big question.
No,
Apologies.
thank you for that question. I know pretty well the case of the Zapatists in Chiapas in Mexico, because of it was highly supported by Don Samuel Ruiz, Tatik, as indigenous call him Papa or Father, Tatik. And Don Samuel Ruiz was very active as a bishop against some bishops in Mexico City, in supporting as a mediator the process, but also to protect communities. And the way that the Zapatists have changed their strategy. I think it was very wise, because they decided not to give the weapons. There have not been a process or ritual to give the weapons to the government. The San Andres agreements were not followed or accomplished by the government, unfortunately, I have to say. But they decided, because this was not accomplished by the government in Mexico, they decided to hide the weapons. And for sure, they are old weapons, luckily. But they changed the strategy to promote their own education, own health system, own way of rule. So I have been in 3 caracolas. It is the name, like caracola. I showed you the last presentation. It is the way that indigenous people build their relationship with the cosmos, with the others. So these caracolas have proved to be more effective in nutrition, their own education, and the rule. When I visited last time with Fellowship of Reconciliation in Mexico, CIPAS, brother organization, sister organization, and others, we were there. So there was the lady, 17 years, with the baby, feeding the baby, and the old man, 8 people. They are the governing body for this Caracol. Some of them don't speak Spanish, so there was an interpreter. And all that they decide, it has been discussed, reflect, and discerned in heavily processed. So maybe the Zapatists process is not in the media now, but they continue acting in that way. That I think it is the best way. It is active nonviolence. So they decided not to receive funds from the government, but funds from international cooperation that could be clean and independent from corruptions and the drug lords there in the region. And going to the other places, the way that our members in Australia and New Zealand are coming back to the situation, although they are white, they came from UK root. They have changed their name. In the case of New Zealand, they call themselves Aotearoa, the indigenous name of this nation. They have all the time clear that they have to decolonize their minds, their attitudes, etc. So it is the way to honor those people that have been killed or exterminated. Yeah. And I think that the good thing, because of course there's patriarchalism within indigenous groups, there's sometimes corruption. It is not ideal. We try not to idealize it, but they keep that connection with the Mother Earth, that connection with the healing the community before healing the person or punish the person. This restorative justice is really important. So the way that we are learning from them, it has been very interesting, including some bishops that are now more aware about we need to listen to these people. Of course, there's a conservative portion of the church, and I'm talking about the COP16, and it will be the same in COP30. The discussion about how do you consider the nature has rights? No, it is animism. It is not Christian. So it has been very interesting. We had to scale the dialogue amongst our platforms and networks in Latin America for the COP16 with 5 theologians, 1 from Germany and 4 from Latin America. And the first phrase by them, it was, the nature has rights. Not only constitutionally in some of our countries, the right to protect a river, for example, but theologically, we consider the nature, because there's a misunderstanding of the Exodus, the men, not the human being, but the men control and the word. No, we are one with the nature. We are one more. So this is a change coming from the indigenous traditions. So I think it is the way that we are learning a lot about that. Thank you for your question.
Anyone else? No, nothing online? Great, well, I think we can just thank Martha Inés again. And that's a lot of words, so thank you.
We continue the conversation.
Yeah. You have an early start with an early meeting this morning, so thank you for your energy and commitment, and just your willingness to be with us and be open with us and to challenge us. So thank you. There'll be more tea and coffee. I'm saying this confidently. There'll be more tea and coffee and refreshments up there. Feel free to stick around and Martha Inés and others in the room. You don't know.
And we can spread it here, can't we?
Yes, yeah, we can. So thank you.
I think one of them might be me, but.
Yes.